think that's probably, I'll just kind of do a small, a short introduction just now whilst people are coming in. So hi everyone, my name is Vanessa. I'm from One CodeBase up here in Aberdeen. I handle all the digital content and social media stuff. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. We have Richard and Jen from WhisperClaims here with us today, talking to us about R&D tax credits. So before we get started, I guess we can kind of do some housekeeping. No fire alarms or anything scheduled today. If you have any questions for Richard and Jen at the end of the webinar, then we have a Q&A button that will probably be at the bottom of your screen. If you want to ask your questions at any point during the webinar, we'll get around to them at the end. So yeah, I'll pass over to Richard and Jen to get the webinar started.
Cool. Hi everyone. Good to meet you, and thanks for taking the time to learn a little bit more about R&D tax credits. So essentially we've been asked to do this because we know that with everything going on at the moment with COVID-19, there's a lot of companies out there that are pretty interested in whatever forms of support or funding they can get relatively quickly to keep the businesses in operation or to invest in the future. So that's where we kind of step forward and volunteer to do a short information session. So obviously this is our bread and butter. Our primary customers are accountants. So we actually build software for about 60 or 70 accountancy firms across the UK who are using our software to prepare R&D tax relief claims for their clients. But we've also directly assisted a small number of companies within CodeBase as well. But really the purpose of today's session is not so much to talk about WhisperClaims, it's really to give you, as the slide says, a real crash course in R&D tax relief. So what they are, how you can use them within your firm, how much they're worth, that kind of thing. We're not going to go into a huge amount of detail because there is a lot of detail in the background. But our aim is to give you that kind of overview, that confidence to work out whether or not this is something that's worth going into in a bit more detail. And if you do have more detailed questions, then we're really happy to follow up with you after the webinar, which we're going to try and hold to about 20 minutes. So short and relatively snappy. And then I think we've got about 15, 20 minutes earmarked for questions as well. Just really quick intro, I'm the CEO. I was formerly a founder of a company called Jumpstart, which did R&D tax relief consultancy, which is where a lot of the knowledge that's gone into the app came from. And Jen?
I'm the ops director, so I worked as an analyst at Jumpstart. So I did about 180 client claims for them. So I've done a lot of work on the kind of design of the app and making sure that it is robust and accurate. Cool,
thanks. So what we're going to cover are what are R&D tax credits, who are they for, how much are they worth, how do you claim, and some resources. And in resources, we're actually going to suggest 3 different ways that you can claim for R&D tax relief, and you can decide, which of these, if any, are applicable. With regard to questions, Vanessa's going to keep an eye on those. So if you type those in, we'll try and field them as they come up. Otherwise, if we don't get to them, we can deal with those at the end. So really quick kind of explanation of R&D tax credits. I think it's important to point out that this is actually a government-backed scheme. Some people think that this is kind of too good to be true, or they're a bit kind of suspicious about why the government would be giving money to companies. But essentially this is a UK Treasury scheme. It's administered by HMRC, and it was actually started by the Labour government back in 2000 for small companies, and then 2002 for large companies. But the whole intention of the scheme, as we'll look at in the next slide, is to support companies making advances through certain types of projects and activities. I think the interesting thing to point out is that in theory, any type or sector of company can apply, but the catch in that is that HMRC use a very narrow definition of R&D. So it's wide ranging in terms of the number of companies that can claim, but it's very specific in what you can actually claim for, if that makes sense. In terms of the financial support that it gives companies, we're not going to get into the mechanics of it, but essentially the relief can translate to 3 types of benefit to your company. You can get a payable cash credit from HMRC if you're loss making, or if you have paid corporation tax in the past, you can get a rebate of that corporation tax. And if you're likely to be profit making in the future, you can reduce your corporation tax liabilities as well. So it's a project-based scheme, but the benefit is through your corporation tax. And that's partly why only limited companies can apply. So if you are in a limited partnership, for example, then unfortunately you can't claim. It's only for limited companies subject to corporation tax. But it is a generous scheme. The strongest support is for loss-making SMEs, and essentially you can get up to just over 33% of what you spent on various things back from HMRC. In terms of who they're for, there's 5 key criteria that HMRC look for in an eligible claim. So this diagram is the kind of simplest possible synopsis that we can come up with of HMRC's online guidance, which runs to many, many pages. But the gist of it is, first of all, they're looking to support companies within a field of science and technology. So that's obviously pretty broad. It tends to include manufacturing, engineering, food and drink, lots of product development and design companies, electronics, the obvious ones like pharma, pharmaceuticals, that kind of thing. But it excludes things that are maybe more in the social science part of things. So they're looking for companies which are either kind of physically making or manufacturing products and trying to improve them, or in the more intangible space, software design companies and software development companies as well.
And I think a key point on this is that it's not related to the company's industry necessarily. So we see a lot of, for example, engineering companies doing software research and software development. So if they're building a new piece of machinery, there will need to be software that controls that. So you can make a claim in any areas of science and technology, and it doesn't have to be linked to the industry in which you kind of work based on things like SIT codes.
So that's the first thing, is the field. The second thing is that they're looking for companies to make advances not relative to their own company, but to what they regard as, or what they call the industry baseline. So that's about looking at what your competition are doing in your area of technology. And if you're able to kind of say, well, this is what our peer group are doing, this is what we're doing that's different and better. And when it comes to the advance, that's usually about making things measurably better. So perhaps stronger, lighter, faster, more error resistant, more fuel efficient, whatever. The point is, it's got to be better in some measurable and objective way rather than just a subjective improvement. And that advance and improvement has got to be relevant to not just what you had at the start of the project in your company, but what was common in industry. So that notion of knowing roughly, I mean, they don't expect you to know exactly what your competitors are doing, but they'll expect you to say, this is how things tend to be done in our industry, and this is what we're doing that's different and better. So that's a really key thing, is that it is relative to the industry, not just your company. Now, on the left-hand side of that diagram, you'll see an example of a company that's made a technical advance, and they've just managed to go from A to B with no kind of technical issues. And unfortunately, from HMRC's perspective, there's no R&D there at all, because what they say is R&D exists when you're trying to achieve the advance through resolving technical challenges. So that's the right-hand side of the diagram, where we've shown in green that the definition of R&D from HMRC's perspective starts when you first hit your key significant technical blocker that is in the way of you achieving your advance. So it's not enough, unfortunately, to be just trying to make something better. You've got to be also resolving significant technical challenges at the same time. It's that combination of the two things that's really key. The last thing that we want to point out is to look for evidence of competent professionals in the company, leading the work, directing subcontractors, and being really kind of hands-on involved in the rectification and resolution of those problems. And the reason for that is that they want to make sure that if a company is telling them that things are difficult, it's because the problems are genuinely technically challenging, as opposed to they're just not using people with the right skills and experience to solve those challenges. So those kind of 5 criteria can be applied to any type of company in any sector. And that's the good thing about the scheme, is that the bar is the same for everyone. You've just got to show kind of these five things. In terms of what the R&D tax credits are worth, as we've already said, it can vary substantially. The reasons for that variance are it'll depend on your profit and loss position in a given financial year, and also what you've spent on a set number of things. So although the scheme is quite wide in terms of the projects, the costs that you can claim for are very, very specific. So those are the staff that you've employed on your R&D projects, subcontractors that you've maybe used or engaged to perform discrete chunks of your work and your R&D, software subscriptions. So that can be things as mundane as, you know, the Word or Office productivity tools that your team uses to communicate or to record the results of the work, or it could be hosting subscriptions necessary to support your R&D projects. You can also claim for utilities, so heat and light, and also raw materials, which tends to be more relevant for engineering, manufacturing, food and drink companies. And there are the two key figures. So support is up to 33% for loss-making companies, and that's 33% of what you've spent on your eligible work. And the companies that are in the fortunate position of paying corporation tax and being profitable, the support is slightly less at 19%. And then there's a more kind of, you know, there's a bit of fuzziness in between on that kind of that scale. So how do you claim? I'm getting a dry throat, so Jen, would you like to talk through this slide? Excuse me.
Yeah, so to be able to make a claim, you need to have completed one financial year and have prepared accounts and be ready to submit your corporation tax submission. So because it's so linked to your corporation tax, it's all based on financial years and tax years. Alongside that, you need to have a summary of the eligible work and have worked out how much you've spent on R&D. And then those figures are put into your CT600, which is the form used to submit your R&D, your corporation tax return. You also need to have records of your expenditure. So this can be in pretty much any format. As long as you can prove that you did the work and you spent the money, you can claim. And HMRC don't need to see that up front. It's just if they were ever to ask any questions, you need to know that you've got something in the background to prove what you've kind of asserted in your claim. And you also need to do this through your accountant, or most companies need to do this through their accountant. So whoever it is that would be dealing with your accounts, tax computations and corporation tax submissions would have to be involved.
Okay. Yeah. So the claim process in a bit more detail, we'll quickly cover this, but I don't want anyone to panic because there are some, there's at least 3 ways you can get support doing this, because our assumption is that if you're on this webinar, you've not done this before, and B, that you might want to do this quite quickly. So the process in theory is that, first of all, you would read HMRC's online guidance and apply that to your projects to work out what parts of the projects you're going to claim for. You would produce a description or a narrative of that qualifying work. And the purpose of that is to tell HMRC what you're claiming for, and also to explain why you consider that work to be eligible for the R&D tax relief. Once you've worked out the parts of the projects that you feel are eligible, you then collect your costs and you work out your apportionment. So of your global expenditure, how much was related to R&D. So your report would include a set of numbers, and you pass that all across your accountant. And as Jen explained, your accountant would then use those expenditure figures to basically work through your tax computation, and that goes into your tax return, and that's how the claim is made. So the last step in that is your accountant submits the tax return to HMRC, and they're processing claims. They say they're still sticking to 28 days at the moment for loss-making SMEs. In practice, I think they're being affected by coronavirus, and it's more like 6 to 8 weeks, but they're really trying their best to get relief out to companies. So essentially that's it. Understand what the guidance is, apply it to your own work, produce your documents, give those documents to your accountant. The accountant does the tax return, and that goes off to HMRC, and then you'd either get a check through the post or a rebate to your corporate bank account. So the question is, right, if you want to do this quickly, what are your options? Option 1 is the DIY route. So if you want to delve into this and become expert enough to do your own claim, where you probably want to start off is, you can Google this. CIRD stands for the Corporate Intangibles Research and Development Manual, and 80,000 is the root of the manual. So if you hit that link first, you'll then see all the contents in all the different areas. The manual is big and it's broad, and I'd say that the one part that you want to focus your attention on initially is CIRD 81900. That's 81900, because that's about 8 pages that's at the heart of the scheme, and that will tell you in generic terms what they mean by R&D and essentially what bits you can claim for, what types of activities you can claim for. So you would read that, you would then apply that to your projects, write your own report. Now, the advantages of doing that is it's the cheapest way, depending on how much you value your time. But the bad thing is it is or can be quite time consuming to kind of become expert in all this guidance. But anyway, that's option one. Option two is that you use an external consultant. If you Google R&D tax relief or R&D tax credits, you'll see that you get so many kind of consultancy firms pitching for the business. So you could throw a rock and hit 3 companies from CodeBase almost. What they will do is they'll come into your company, speak to you about your projects, and they'll manually produce your report and costs. They're also likely to include the cost of inquiry defence within their fees. But the things to be aware of are that they'll probably charge you a contingent rate, so a percentage of your tax credit, and that can be as high as 30% as well. Sometimes you can play them off against each other and get the rate right down, but essentially they'll probably come in at 25 to 30%, and that can be a big chunk out of your claim. And really, we'd like to see you keeping more in your pocket. The other thing to be aware of is if you don't have a lot of expenditure, they might not be able to take your case just because they're looking for fees of probably £2,000 to £3,000 for it to be worth it for them with their kind of manual consultancy process. So if you want another option, it's actually to use us, because although our customers do tend to be accountants, as I said at the start, we've also supported companies within CodeBase itself to claim just by giving them access to the same software, the same platform as accountants would use, but you just use that directly on your own companies. Coupled with that, we provide consultancy support. As ex-consultants ourselves, we're really happy to kind of engage with companies, talk through your projects, walk you through how to use the software, and just kind of be that sounding board as you're working through things. The nice thing about this, of course, is that the software builds the report and does all the costs. That's more or less at the click of a button, and then you give that to your accountant as usual. Now, that option is, we believe, faster and cheaper than using anyone else. So although primary customers are accountants, we're seeing kind of good results from working with SMEs as well. And on that note, here are some examples of the companies that we've helped so far within CodeBase. And Michael from Voxio, I'm not sure, I can't see, is Michael on the call, Vanessa? Sorry, Vanessa, you're also muted.
Yes, he is on. Okay.
So before this, Michael was offering to kind of give some unvarnished, truthful kind of impressions of what it was like. So if there are any questions about that, maybe Michael would like to handle them.
I can always unmute Michael and he can jump on if you'd like. If
yeah,
you're
sure.
okay with that, Michael. I hope he will be. Should I just unmute him?
Or
oh, I'll allow him to talk.
Oh, here we go.
Michael?
Yes.
Hello, how are you?
It is me. So I've done R&D tax credits with WhisperClaims, but I've also done them before in a different company with a consultancy. And I kind of, whenever they came up as a possibility, I always thought, I don't want to go through that hell again, because there was so much work put into identifying the amount of time we spent on things, who spent it, what exactly they did, and creating a claim. And then we had to give all that to some consultants who then took away and turned that into a report. And so it was expensive and time consuming. So I imagined this kind of, this like sort of month of pain in order to get a little bit of money back from the government. But it turns out that it doesn't have to be like that. And I was really, I mean, when I spoke to Richard, he said, oh, this will probably take you about a day or so to do. The first claim I did took about an hour. And then maybe about half an hour sitting with Richard while he went through the claim and just asked me questions. So it was unbelievably easy, quick, and successful. So I mean, I can't recommend these guys highly enough, which isn't very unvarnished, I know, but compared to my experience previously, it's just a world away. Yeah, so I think our first claim, we managed to get about 13K back, and we've just done another one, which should get us about 33K. So it's really, you know, for a morning's work and a fixed fee, it was a no-brainer for us. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to answer questions about it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Michael. I'll just mute you, but I'll keep you on if anyone has any questions for Michael. But there is a question that came through from Eric. He asks, what happens if the claim is questioned or rejected?
So what the consultants will do is they kind of play on your fear a bit. So they'll charge you high rates specifically because they say, well, relax. If there's an inquiry, we'll handle it. And the reason that they can do that is they know that the inquiry rates are so low. Mm-hmm. So the way that we handle that is we don't charge companies for inquiry defense until you actually need it. So we've got a full suite of audit inquiry support services that we offer to accountants, and we allow them to use that on a pay-as-they-go kind of model, so they don't pay until they need it. And that's something that we're willing to extend to small companies as well. So if in the future HMRC ever did come back to you, then yeah, absolutely, we could help you defend that. It's something that we do all the time for our accountants and customers.
In terms of how an inquiry actually kind of happens, I've never, in my however many years I've been doing this, 8 years of doing claims, I've never seen a claim be rejected outright by HMRC. Generally, they will ask questions first. Usually an inquiry is triggered by something in the narrative or something in the costs. So they'll dig into one or other in more detail. Most inquiries can be defended in a fairly straightforward way. It might be that they just didn't understand something, they misunderstood something, they've got the wrong end of the stick about the work that you're doing, and you can usually, with a nicely written, persuasive response, cover all their questions and they'll accept it. Occasionally, you might have to reduce the costs if they feel that that's too high, but I think, so the inquiry rate generally is about 2% of claims. I think I've only ever seen 1 or 2 that couldn't be rescued from an inquiry, and those were ones that were badly put together and shouldn't have been submitted in the first place. Like, they were companies that just weren't eligible, and
yeah, they were badly advised.
Badly advised from the beginning, and that's the key thing, is making sure that your claim is robust and defensible up front. And if it is, then if HMRC were to ask questions, it's a fairly straightforward process to respond to them. It's hard to give general answers because every inquiry is essentially unique. It'll have a different set of questions and a different set of information that they're looking for.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you don't get a lot of rejections. I think that kind of puts people off a lot about going through the process, is the fear of rejection. So I think to hear that it's less likely for rejection, more questions.
Yeah, and HMRC obviously do a risk assessment as well based on the size of the claim and how they perceive it to be prepared as well. So the reports that are produced by our system are kind of designed based on all of our knowledge as consultants. So we've set it up to be as informative as possible for HMRC, but also not introducing points of ambiguity or red flags, things that would unfairly or unduly attract their attention.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's another question from Eric. This came in. How much does WhisperClaims charge? This might be an offline question, but
no, it's fine. Why don't we let Michael take this one?
Yeah, sure. Let me just unmute him. Michael?
I can't exactly remember the amount, but I know that they charge code-based companies half of what they would charge normally. So, or we get a discount anyway. I think, so I'm going to, it's dangerous maybe to say it, but I think it was about 750 plus VAT.
You're bang on.
First claim.
Yeah.
And then we got a special discount because they were doing some user testing, and they offered us half price on our next claim if we took part in the user testing. And I couldn't resist a bargain, so I signed up for that. An hour or so of my life talking about the interface and using it and describing it to a UX designer, and I got it even cheaper. So I'm delighted, right? I mean, that's, yeah. If you think about comparison to my previous experience, where never mind, I mean, just leaving aside the cost of a consultant, but just the time, 750 quid for a process that took me in total maybe 2 hours compared to a process that had previously taken me weeks. It just makes sense, right?
Michael, you got the numbers bang on. So when we're selling this to companies outside CodeBase, they're paying £1,250 at the moment. Although as we add more consultancy support, that's actually likely to go up. But for CodeBase, yeah, we've got this kind of deal where we're capping fees at £750. And also, if your claim is below a certain size, below £30,000 of eligible expenditure, our fee actually comes down as well. So that means that no matter how small your claim, the fee will never be kind of too big to act as a barrier. So the smaller your claim, the smaller the fee is.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Which is kind of, this is making the most of an opportunity, right? Because right now, WhisperClaims are quite eager for people like us to use our system because it gives them proof points, it gives them volume, it gives them money as well, right? And they're really, like, probably the thing that I liked most is not that their system is really quick and brilliant and all those things, which is cool, but but Richard came downstairs to my office, sat with me, went through my claim, and this guy is an R&D consultant, R&D tax credit consultant, and checked my claim for me. So it's a kind of really cheeky way to get some really good advice as well.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, but it'll probably time limited. As soon as you get busy, you'll be like, yeah, we're too busy to talk to you now.
No, like we really want to, we've been in CodeBase for the last 2 years?
2 years? Yeah,
2 years.
2 and a bit years.
And we've kind of grown steadily up to about 6 people, had about 3 offices in that time, but yeah, really kind of keen to support other CodeBase residents. So whether you're in Edinburgh, Aberdeen or Stirling, delighted to help. Great.
You've actually answered one of the other questions was, does the CodeBase discount apply to?
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Oh, sorry, Vanessa, you actually, you broke up there.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, no worries. It was just someone had asked in the Q&A, does the CodeBase discount apply to Stirling and Aberdeen?
Yes, absolutely, of course.
Great. There was another question. Sorry, what was that, Richard? Sorry.
No, the only thing I was going to add is I just realised I'd forgotten to put our contact details up. If people did want to get in touch, my email address is just richard@whisperclaims.co.uk and Jen's is jen@.
Cool. I'll follow all the attention up as well and pop all the email details on that too.
Perfect.
So we've got another question from Pete. We used a consultant previously. Last year we had already paid corporation tax. The claim was approved and they paid out the refund over our corporation tax, but didn't repay the corporation tax. We only have an unmanned phone number to contact HMRC to query this and don't get a response. Can you help?
So, sorry, is the query about a claim that's been made but not paid out?
I think so. It says the claim was approved and they paid out the refund over our corporation tax, but they didn't repay the corporation tax.
That's probably.
I don't know if you could expand on that a little bit, Pete, just to clarify what it is that you're needing some help with. Might be useful.
Certainly, when it comes to HMRC being unresponsive, they're kind of like really scaling back the support and information that they're giving out, unfortunately, just now, because they're so busy and they're trying to just get the claims out. Because even when we submit questions to HMRC, it's taking time for them to come back.
Mm-hmm. No worries. What I'll do is I'll unmute Pete because he'll speak. Pete, are you there?
Hi, Richard. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Pete. Yeah, we can.
Excellent, excellent. So our claim was, I can't remember the exact numbers. Let's say that our claim was £2,000 and they approved the £2,000. We had already paid £1,300 of corporation tax. They paid us £700 out, but didn't repay the £1,300 that we'd already paid in corporation tax.
Okay. So it's like a compound benefit, it sounds like.
Basically, because we'd already paid the corporation tax,
okay,
we should have had that refunded in addition to the money on top of that.
Okay, so it's generally up to your accountant how they use the tax benefit of the application. So I'm not sure what conversation your accountant had or what direction he gave HMRC about how you wanted to use the tax benefit. But normally what we would expect to see is that, yeah, you would get a rebate of corporation tax that you have paid, assuming that your accountant has indicated that they want that to be.
The story that we have is that they seem to have just lost it somewhere.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I think they are processed, unfortunately, by two different parts of HMRC as well. So if it was so it sounds like let's go £700 as a tax credit, and then the rest should have been a rebate.
Yes.
So there's obviously something going missing between the two different arms of.
They'll also,
HMRC.
like, there's different timescales in place. So like the £700, if that was the payable cash credit, that would come back first. And then, as Jen says, another department will handle the corporation tax repayment, and that can take longer.
Okay.
As to how much longer, we've heard various kind of things from being 2 months to like 4 months.
Okay, I think we're at about 6 months now.
6 months, okay, that does seem, yeah.
Which seems excessive, and there doesn't seem to be any way to actually get hold of anyone at HMRC to query it.
It is difficult, I think, yeah, because at the moment all we get is you can call the R&D team and then they will call you back at some point. Yeah. So we've probably gone through that loop. It's probably something we could continue offline and see if we can think of a way to unpick that.
Yeah.
We'll pick up with you. That would be great. Okay. That would be great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
No worries. Thanks, Pete. There was another question through from Michael. He says, what is the timescale from submitting a claim to getting the money from HMRC?
So from your accountant submitting the tax return, if you're applying for a payable cash credit, it should be within 28 days of them receiving it.
And at the moment, HMRC's published figures say that 95% are paid out within 28 days. I don't know how true that is, but that's their official published figure.
Okay.
That's probably the last set of statistics.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's taken longer just now. But as just discussed, if the benefit is a reduction in corporation tax or a repayment of corporation tax, it can take months for it to come through.
If it's a reduction in tax that you haven't already paid, it's an interesting one, because essentially you're just not paying that tax, and you almost certainly won't get a direct response about your R&D from HMRC. They'll just accept your CT600 as is, and nothing will happen. So you just have, it's usually best to leave that about kind of 6 weeks and then assume that everything's okay. Mm-hmm. And then they'll ask questions if they ask questions, which is unlikely. The rebates are a bit different as well. As we said, it's difficult to know. They don't publish figures or targets for when they will pay tax rebates.
Kind of a wait and see kind of game right at the moment.
The other side of it is if you owe HMRC any money for something else, like if you owe VAT or you owe PAYE or anything like that, they will hold back any money that you might have got from R&D and use that to pay off the other money you owe them, that kind of thing. And obviously, because it goes in as part of your corporation tax return, if they decide to look into something else like your VAT or your PAYE, then it can delay the paying out of the R&D claim. So it's a bit kind of, you can end up in a loop with them if they're looking at different areas or different things.
Okay, cool. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I think there was a question that popped up in one of my chats, was if you're a startup and you're not within that financial year yet, I mean, is there, like, what benefits is it to them to kind of start thinking about, you know, putting in a claim for the next year? Like,
so like if you're in your first year,
yeah, if you're in your first year and like you're not really in a position to kind of start the process, but what are the first things to kind of like start thinking about in, you know, in advance of possibly looking into it?
I would kind of encourage the people on the technical side of the business to do something simple like keeping a diary of technical challenges, which makes it really easy at the end of the year to review back what you've done that was difficult for this. And that will just mean that you're in a good position. As soon as your first year completes, you can then effectively start to prepare your claim. And the sooner you prepare your accounts for that period and get it all in, the sooner you'll get your benefit back. So it's just a case of, as soon as that year completes, then you're in a position, and you'll be better prepared if you started a bit of thinking and prep work first.
We're happy, obviously, for anyone in that position, just have a quick chat about any of the kind of risk factors that might, because we didn't go into it in the thing, but there's taking grants funding can really affect your ability to claim for R&D tax. So we'd be happy to have a quick chat with anyone in that position who, just to kind of make sure they're not doing anything in that first year that could affect their ability to claim in future.
Mm-hmm. Actually, that's a really good point, is the CBILS thing, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, that's classified as a state aid. So that actually conflicts with the R&D tax relief for SMEs, which is also state aid. So if you're considering taking that funding, the CBILS funding, have a chat with us about what you're planning to use that on, and we can kind of give you some advice on how to minimize the impact of using two state aids. Basically.
Okay, cool. I also think there was another question about games and animation studios. What options are available for them, and kind of any advice that you've got for those kind of businesses?
Just a really kind of quick take on that is, if you're producing games or animations and you're essentially artists, so you're kind of directing your creative energies into producing new animations or characters, but you're essentially using tools that are specifically made for that purpose, then really you're just using a tool that's pre-existing, and there's no R&D involved in the use of that tool. But if you're reaching the limits of those tools' capabilities and you're undertaking design and development work to extend their capabilities, so you're actually kind of changing the code to make it capable of producing newer, more sophisticated types of cosmetic effects, for example, then that's absolutely where things could be very, very technically challenging, and you could get relief to support you. So I'd say there's a distinction to be drawn between companies that are using tools for the purpose they were designed for, and companies that are trying to take those tools beyond their existing capabilities.
The other thing to remember for video and games companies is there is the video games tax relief scheme. So it's not something that we are experts in. We've had a little bit of kind of peripheral experience of that. But for when you're doing the design elements of the game, so as Richard said, the parts where you're not pushing the boundaries of technology, but you are producing those kind of aesthetic effects and things, there is a different tax relief you can claim for. Companies can claim for both VGTR and R&D tax credits, but you've just got to make sure you can only claim the costs in one or other. So it could be that 90% of your costs are actually around the aesthetic effects, but then you've done some eligible R&D, and it might be better to route that through the R&D scheme. But that, again, it's something we can kind of chat through with people.
Yeah.
Cool. No worries. And what do you think are like some of the potential pitfalls that to kind of look out for in the application process?
So I would say one pitfall is, ironically enough, giving HMRC too much information, because we see reports being prepared by the people, and they especially like if founders are preparing claims, because what they'll do is they'll talk with great enthusiasm about the kind of commercial implications or advantages of their product. But actually from HMRC's perspective, they're trying to look through the commercial layer and even the functionality layer to the technology layer underneath all that. So talking about the commercial applications of your product or why it's commercially innovative it's not just irrelevant, it can also shoot you in the foot, because then you can say, well, this company doesn't look like they really understand the criteria. Let's have a closer look at their claim. So the advice would be to focus it purely on the kind of tech challenges and the tech advances you're making. Make it really clear that the advance is measurable. So if you can cite, well, we've had a 12% improvement in whatever, that's a great thing to put in. Make it really numerical and not at all subjective and not at all commercial.
Cool. And have you got any kind of like useful online like resources that people can refer to kind of read up a bit more about it?
We can probably, after this, we can distribute some links. Vanessa, if we give them to you, you can send them out to attendees.
No
yeah, there's a number of kind of resources and guides, not just to the kind of scheme itself, but we've probably got some useful materials as well.
Yeah, there's some good stuff on our website, and then there's obviously HMRC offer lots and lots of different bits of information. Not all of it entirely coherent, but it is there and it's readily available.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Has anyone got any further questions for Jen and Richard whilst we're here? If not, thank you very much, Richard and Jan. We'll do a virtual round of applause. Thanks so much for joining us today. I guess we'll finish up a little bit earlier if no one has any questions. As I said, I'll send a follow-up email with you guys' email contacts if anyone wants to get directly in contact with Jen and Richard. And yeah, we'll add in some of those resource links and everything as well, so that'd be great. Check out some more of CodeBase or CodeBase events online. You can check it out at www.thisiscodebase.com/events. Everything's kind of uploaded there. And yeah, this webinar is going to be recorded, so if you know someone that might find this really useful, then that will be uploaded onto our YouTube. So yeah, once again, Richard and Jan, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Thanks.